so I think if Alejandro Garnacho is to develop into a world-class player in the future, he's more likely to do it from the left than he is from the right. However, I would argue at this stage in his career, he might actually be more effective playing from the right or maybe even from a central position. And so I'm going to explain how Garnacho could function in a wide right winger role similar to Freddie Ljungberg in Arsene Wenger's early Arsenal team of the late 90s, or like Julian Alvarez in a more central position, although this would take a high level of tactical creativity on Ten Hag's part. But before I come on to that, let me first answer two questions. Why is Garnacho better on the right at the moment, and what will change in his game to mean that playing him from the left becomes his optimal position? Well, firstly, the reason I prefer Garnacho on the right is because I often feel that on the left, his play becomes rather predictable. I think he lacks this one attribute in his game that he will eventually develop, and that is strength. And I don't just mean his upper or lower body strength, but also how he uses it as well, and his explosiveness on top of that. Whenever I see Garnacho isolating a fullback in a 1v1, I often feel like he doesn't have the explosiveness or the power to be able to fully beat his man. He is able to wrong foot the defender at times, but whereas a young Ronaldo or a young Bale then had the leg and upper body power to burst ahead of the defender, taking them out of the game completely, Garnacho at this stage in his career hasn't developed this sort of physicality or athleticism. And that's the primary reason as to why I think for the next one, maybe 2 seasons, Garnacho should be primarily playing from the right. However, it's not just his athleticism and physicality, I also think he does need to work on his overall composure and decisiveness in shooting positions from the left, as I often feel that when a wide attacker is shooting after cutting inside onto their stronger foot, there are a lot more options, whereas when the shooter is on his strongest side, most players really, the majority of the time, should be aiming low across the goalkeeper into the far corner. And so if you are a player who hasn't yet got that cold, calculated confidence in your game, being a right footer playing from the right side can simplify your game in these situations. On the left side, Garnacho is constantly in two minds, debating whether to burst down the outside on his left, knowing that he may have to cut back, or cutting inside early and trying to move into a shooting position. On the right, however, his game is mostly going to be trying to take on the fullback down the outside, being a source of ball progression in all thirds of the pitch through his ball carrying at speed into space, carrying United's attack up the pitch, whilst in the final third using the same movement and speed that he uses from the left to get in behind the back line and into goal scoring positions, only this time from the right. And whilst I would say that Rashford is certainly a better finisher from the left, I don't think Garnacho is. I think whether it's opening up his body to slot the ball into the far corner, driving it hard and low across the goalkeeper into the far corner, or shooting from the edge of the box on either foot, Garnacho has shown over the past 2 seasons that he's capable of scoring from a variety of different positions. And this is where we first come on to my Freddie Ljungberg comparison, and then I'll come on to my Julian Alvarez comparison, and I will be providing a tactical explanation on both roles that Garnacho could play. But before I get into that, if you want to pick up any new season jerseys, go over to Jersey FIFA. They've also got retro, international and club jerseys as well. You can use code Atlantis at checkout for a discount. A link will be in my Instagram bio, which I will leave linked in the description. So if we think back to the team that Freddie Ljungberg played in at Arsenal under Arsene Wenger, he was used as a right-sided midfielder in a 4-4-2. The Swede had a lot of defensive responsibility, but he had the athleticism and the work rate to provide it, just like Garnacho will have to, playing from the right in Ten Hag's 4-2-4 aggressive pressing shape in the opposition's build-up phase, whilst also picking up a position in the right side of midfield when Ten Hag drops into a 4-4-2 defensive shape in the middle third. But when his side had possession, Ljungberg wasn't the sort of player who thrived when receiving the ball in tight areas. Instead, he was a runner who would provide forward runs ahead of the ball and in behind the back line. And just like Ljungberg being a right footer on the right, Garnacho will be very direct, looking to break down the outside and in behind the fullback or left-sided centre-back. And given that he's already shown he's capable of scoring from a variety of different positions and situations inside of the box, I don't think Garnacho not being able to cut inside from the left onto his right foot and release a strike is going to significantly reduce Garnacho's goal scoring output. And that got me thinking. See, when Julian Alvarez was signed by Manchester City in 2022, he was a goal-hungry poacher-type centre-forward, but after probably less than a year, Guardiola was able to use Alvarez as a 3-8, effectively in the Gundogan position, pushing up from a midfield 3 into the half space and looking to receive the ball between the lines, whilst also looking to arrive late in the box and provide a goal-scoring output alongside Haaland. I think Garnacho's style and technique at the moment is very similar to a young Freddie Ljungberg in the late 90s, early 2000s, not completely fluid in their running, clunky at times, but ultimately having the pace and the desire to beat their men purely by outrunning them. However, I think what Garnacho has that Ljungberg didn't is the potential to be a 15-goal a season Premier League attacker. Ljungberg's average goal return at Arsenal from 98 to 07 was around 6 or 7 a season, although he did hit 12 in 01-02 in the title-winning season. But Garnacho is already at 7 goals and 4 assists at this stage in his career, and so this is where my comparison with Julian Alvarez can be seen. So I think when United are chasing the game or in need of a goal, Garnacho could pick up this central position with Ahmad to his right, Bruno Fernandes in the left-sided half space, and Rashford or Sancho also in the front line from the left flank. But as I said, you probably aren't going to start Garnacho in this position, but if Ten Hag needs to make an offensive change, I think this could be a really good option, and I'm going to break down why. But it's not just goal scoring that Garnacho could provide from this area. I think playing in this central role, Garnacho can primarily sit behind the opposition's midfield line, lingering on the shoulder of the midfielder, sitting close enough to the player so that someone from the defensive line can't push up to mark Garnacho, with the midfielder ahead not able to pick him up either unless he decides to drop deeper. And so from here, when Garnacho is able to shift his position and open up a passing lane from in front of the opposition's midfield line, he can receive the ball directly to his feet, turn and then drive at the back line. So for example, let's say it's 1-1 60 minutes into the second game of the season, away at Brighton. Under Fabian Herzler, Brighton are going to be able to sustain periods of possession, but this could work to United's advantage even if they are drawing at this stage of the game. If the starting midfield was more of a defensive midfielder, a ball winner, be it Casemiro or Yedeli, or hopefully a new signing, with Mainu and Bruno Fernandes ahead, Ten Hag may need to inject some pace, ball carrying ability and directness into the midfield. And so 60 minutes 1-1, I would be looking to bring on Garnacho for the more defensive minded midfielder, move Mainu into that pivot position, with Garnacho and Bruno Fernandes ahead. Now obviously this isn't the strongest central midfield defensively, but for this scenario we are chasing a goal, and that is when risks need to be taken. Out of possession, when United are looking to press high, I actually think Garnacho and Bruno Fernandes applying pressure ahead of Mainu, with Rashford and Ahmad narrow on the flanks and Xerxes sitting just in front, actually works quite well, with Garnacho having the energy and work rate to fulfill this role. In the middle third, United can use an incredibly narrow midfield 5, with Garnacho and Bruno Fernandes either side of Mainu, with Ahmad and Rashford tucked in narrow alongside them to create a 4-5-1, or if we needed to compact the centre of the pitch, Ahmad and Rashford could sit slightly higher, creating a narrow 4-3-3, vacating more space on the flanks in order to cut off the opposition's passing options through the centre. But from these positions, the benefit of having Garnacho centrally is how big of a threat he can be when there is a turnover, and United look to transition the attack quickly. As soon as the ball is won by one of United's deeper players, if they can find a direct pass into Garnacho's feet, the Argentine may be able to use his pace to carry the ball powerfully through the space in the opposition's open midfield, driving the attack forward at speed into the opposition's half. But before I continue, a reminder that if you want to see my predictions for this season, I have got them on my weekly newsletter. You can sign up for just over £1 a month. I'll leave it linked in the description. So there are two main reasons why I really like the idea of using Garnacho in a central position later on in the game, alongside Ahmad to his right. As from here, you'd have Ahmad and Garnacho on the same side, with Garnacho providing the over and underlapping runs, looking to get into crossing positions behind the fullback, whilst Ahmad can either thread those passes, or instead look to cut in field into a shooting or a chance creating position. And also from here we could see some alternating in position, with Ahmad moving centrally and Garnacho pulling out to the right, depending on what Ten Hag thinks is going to be more effective. But the second reason is centred around Julian Alvarez, as I think like the Argentine at City, Garnacho in a central starting position will allow him to not necessarily get into more goal scoring positions, but into higher XG positions, which over the long term should see Garnacho's goal totals increase. Now obviously he isn't going to be used in this role too often, likely you'd have Mason Mount if you wanted someone to provide the forward runs ahead of Xerxes, or maybe Bruno Fernandes with Mainu pushing into the left-sided half space and Ugarte as the single pivot. Most of the time you would expect Garnacho to be playing from the left, as I think Rashford is more likely to fall out of form than Ahmad, though Garnacho is also going to be used a lot on the right as well this season. However, it will be interesting to see when Garnacho's decision making, strength and explosiveness hits that elite level, as once he has those attributes to the required level, that is when he has to be playing from the left more often, as cutting infield into shooting positions is what is going to allow him to get to that 15 goals plus tally in the Premier League, just like Gareth Bale and Ronaldo. But nevertheless, using Garnacho centrally in that right-sided half space and having him run ahead of Ahmad and also interchange with him is the sort of tactical creativity that I do want to see from Ten Hag this season.